Okay, and I'm just going to send a quick email. Okay.
Julie, I found the quiz. It went to my spam.
Oh, now, do you have the kind of system where you can easily see whether your spam has anything in it without having to go in there?
No, I have to go in it.
Oh, okay. All right. So I wonder why, of all the times that I've sent you email, why this one had to go to your spam. But anyway, I'm going to bring up the PowerPoints for today. But before we look at the PowerPoints, we definitely have to talk about some theory about today's topic. So let's see. Okay. Week 10.
Today's topic is
herbs that calm the Shen, and specifically the sinking, the heavy substances. So let me just bring this up. Okay. So when we talk about calming the Shen, we have a couple different major ways to do it. So we have tonight's group of herbs is heavy substances that are minerals like bones and shells, and those herbs work when you have an excess type of Shen disturbance. So we'll talk about what that means. What does an excess type of Shen disturbance look like? And then next week, we're going to be talking about plant substances, which are more nourishing to the heart, and they're more useful for deficiency type of Shen disturbances. So excess Shen disturbances usually involve the liver or the heart, and they usually involve some heat and also some yang rising. So these are people who have very high stress, easily agitated, they're very high strung, easily angered, and they often have excess symptoms like racing heart and palpitations. They may feel hot in the upper part of the body, which is because of the yang rising, and they may feel just really explosive, like they're just about to explode and their head is going to fly off. They could even have things like high blood pressure. They might have insomnia, panic attacks, stuff like that. Excess dreams, vivid dreams, nightmares. And so what we need to do for these people is really sedate them and calm them down. And we can do that with a combination of nourishing herbs and sedating herbs. That's often done. So tonight it will seem like we're going to be only using minerals, but we actually use these minerals in combination with other herbs. But we do need to use the heavy substances to sink, we call it to sink the Shen. The tongue for these people is usually red, and it might have a redder tip or sides or red spots even. It could have, in terms of the coat, it could have a normal coat, or it could be a thicker yellow or white coat. It just depends on whether how much heat there is, and also whether there's phlegm complicating the picture too. So a lot of people have, when they have rising yang, they also have phlegm rising up, and it's disturbing their heart as well, creating like mania and confusion and explosive tempers and things like that. A lot of times clearing phlegm and sedating that person will really take care of the problem. So the herbs are mainly, or not just mainly, they are all minerals of some kind or another. They are mostly cool or cold. 2 are neutral. Actually, 1 is warm and 2 are neutral, but all the rest are cool or cold. They anchor and settle versus nourishing and calming. So that's the big difference. When a patient comes to you with a Shen disturbance, if they tend to make you feel kind of anxious and angry and kind of you want to defend yourself, usually that's an excess yang rising type of Shen disturbed person, and usually it has to do with the liver. This is called transference. Those of you who studied psychology know about this. So when the practitioner starts feeling some of the same things that the patient is exhibiting, that's called transference. And you can often tell what's going on in your patient if you pay attention to what your own reaction is. That's unless you're somebody who just doesn't react very much or knows how to build a good boundary. But most of us will feel things related to what patients feel. Now, on the other hand, if they have the more deficient type of Shen disturbance, usually it's more the heart is involved, the heart and possibly the kidney if they have like fear and anxiety. So for these people, my experience is you don't want to step back away from them. You really want to reach out to them and you want to comfort them because they're not acting in any way threatening. They're sad, they're crying, they're anxious, but it's not something that tends to put you off. Now, some people won't be put off by the angry people either. I can handle a fair amount of confrontation in my office, but I had one woman come and she was really, really angry about something that her gardeners had done. And she wasn't, controlling herself at all. She was right up in my face yelling, and I couldn't deal with it. So I said, why don't you just lie down? And I asked her if I could needle kidney 1. And this was one of the only times I've ever needled kidney 1, although I do it now more often. And she said, yes, you can. I told her what it was and what it would feel like. And it really calmed her down right away. Kidney 1 is like pulling the drain out of a bathtub. It just makes everything drain away. And it's a great point for people who are really wound up. So back to the herbs, the mineral herbs. They can be hard to digest. They can easily damage the stomach and spleen, causing things like bloating or diarrhea. Sometimes you can get away with using the minerals for a few days or a couple weeks, but then sometimes if people have a weak spleen, they will eventually, their spleen will give way and they'll start to develop diarrhea. So then you have to change to something else. You can combine these herbs with herbs that protect the stomach. So things like spleen qi tonic herbs like baiju, for example, or shenchu, which is a digestive herb. It's a pressed biscuit with a bunch of ingredients in it that's very protective and really helps the stomach manage if you're giving heavy, mineral substances. So those are some strategies that you can do to try to not damage the spleen. Formulas that have the mineral products in them, there are several that are really ancient, really very traditional formulas. One of them has cinnabar in it. It's called Ju Sha Anshen Wan. It means cinnabar pill to calm the heart, something like that. But then we also can use the first 2 herbs we're going to talk about are called longu and mu li. Here's longu on the screen right now. We can put longu and mu li into other formulas. Like we have harmonizing formulas, like they're mostly based on chaihu, bupleurum, which if you've had herbs 1. And chaihu formulas are really good for smoothing out the liver qi. And so sometimes if somebody has extreme liver yang rising, along with qi disharmony, liver qi disharmony, we can put the chaihu and longu into a bupleurum type of formula. And those kind of formulas are good for people who have agitation, especially due to like addiction withdrawal and things like that, and other substance problems, but also just general liver qi stagnation with agitation and those kind of symptoms. The bupleurum formulas are good for that. Okay, so next week we'll talk about the herbs that treat the deficiency type of Shen disturbance, which I feel is more common. At least it's what I've seen more often. But what is deficient here? What kind of organ functions would be deficient to cause this type of Shen disturbance? Well, mostly heart, heart Qi deficiency, heart Yin deficiency would be a common pattern. But also the liver and kidney can be deficient as well, especially in their yin. So kidney yin deficiency can lead to heart yin deficiency, as you know. That's what we call a liver and heart disharmony. And then we'll have all typical yin deficient signs along with Shen disturbance, like insomnia and anxiety and easily startled and trouble sleep. I said insomnia, trouble sleeping, afternoon fever, and those kind of symptoms. So heart, spleen could be deficient, causing a Shen disturbance. It's pretty common for heart blood and spleen qi together to be deficient. And we have a formula for that called Gui Pitang, which is a famous formula for tonifying both of those things, the spleen qi and the heart blood. Okay, so yeah, let me just check something real quick, sorry. Okay, no, it's fine. Okay. All right, so the symptoms are milder on the deficiency type of Shen disturbance. Forgetfulness, disorientation, mild fear, easily crying, sad. It's more common for these people to have depression more than anger, or anxiety and depression more than anger. They won't seem as disturbed and as excessively, agitated as the excess type of Shen disturbed people.
Julie, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
I'm confused right now. So you're doing the introduction for both of these kind of categories?
Yes.
I don't know. Is it two categories or is it really just one that's been split into two?
It's
like what I have on my thing. Settle the spirit is what we're doing tonight, and then calm Shen is what we're doing next week.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's right. So settle the spirit or sedate, anchor, settle, and sedate is what we're talking about for tonight's herbs. But this introduction that I'm doing, I am covering both categories. The excess category where we need to sedate, and then next week, the deficiency category where we're going to need to nourish.
Okay, so last question. So what you just said previously about heart qi deficiency, heart qi or yin, liver, kidney, spleen deficiency, that's all pertains to this, the calm the Shen part. Is that right?
Yeah, the next week category. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to confuse you. Sometimes both of these categories are referred to as calming the Shen yeah, sometimes both categories are referred to as calming the Shen. Let me see, what do I have on my herb list? I have as a general title for both groups, I have calm the spirit. And then underneath that, I have anchor, settle, and sedate, and those are the minerals. And then for the other ones, I have nourish the heart. So I agree, I'm using a lot of different kinds of terms. Maybe
that's what it has in Bensky.
Okay, so I generally try to take my terminology out of Bensky. So Yeah, like so for the final, if I gave you an ID herb and I wanted you to name the category, if it's a mineral, I would like you to use at least some word that implies that we're sedating. So anchor, settle, sedate, or sink, you could even say, sinking the Shen. And then if it's one of the herbs from next week, I would want you to use words like calm the Shen by nourishing the heart or something like that. Is that good, Adam?
Yeah, thank you. Could you mind just repeating what you had just said last before I interrupted you? That basically, I can't
If I
remember
knew-
what you were saying. I was
If
confused.
I knew what I said, I would probably, let's see.
Are
Well,
we doing anchor and settle tonight?
yes, we are, but for this introductory part, I'm talking about the basic theory for both parts, this week and next week. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but I don't think it's not that easy to understand what an excess Shen disturbance is if we don't also know what a deficiency Shen disturbance is. So I felt like I had to present both sides of this. And I don't know where I was. Does anybody know where I was? I think the last thing I said was these deficiency type people, the next week's people, are going to not seem as excessively agitated or really upset as the people for this week that we're going to sync. So they're just more a milder symptom of Shen disturbance is what I was getting at. Okay.
You said they were forgetful, disoriented, and depressed.
Yeah, that's what I said. The tongue may still be reddish if there's yin deficiency heat going on. It may have no coat or it may be peeled. That's a typical yin deficient tongue, so you may find that. But again, there could be phlegm involved too with this next week's type, the deficiency type. And so if that were the case, you would see signs of dampness and phlegm on the tongue as well. If there's deficiency, the pulse will tend to be more thready and less like pounding and robust and wiry. So you might have you probably would have a weaker pulse with these kind of people. So the herbs, and these are the herbs for next week, are going to be plant parts, roots, barks, flowers. Seeds are often really strong to nourish the yin because they contain moistening substances like oils and things. And then we can again combine these herbs with other tonic herbs. Like from the yin tonics, we know baihe, lily bulb, is really good for heart, heat in the heart and Shen disturbance related to yin deficiency heat. And also dadzao, the black date, is also good at nourishing the blood for Shen disturbance. That's why it's in Ganmai Dadzao Tang, the formula for restless organ syndrome that we talked about last week as well. Okay, so this theory that I just lectured from is not in the drive, but I will put it in the drive, and I'll put it there tonight so you can see everything that I just talked about will be on that page. And I'm certain that as we go through the herbs, it will become more obvious the real distinctions between tonight's type of Shen disturbance and next week's type of Shen disturbance. Okay, I think this is a logical time for a break because we're now doing 2 10-minute breaks, and this will be our first 10-minute break. So it's 6:53. Let's come back in 10 minutes. So that'll be a little bit after 7. Okay, 10 minutes.
Julie, I have a general question. So
Yeah.
basically the calm the spirit category and anchor the Shen. And can you just say as a general way that we can pick pretty much any of the tonify the yin? I know you mentioned Baihe and the that's out, but
Yeah. If there's yin deficiency related to any Shen disturbance, then yes, you can choose any yin tonic that you want. But
okay.
the ones that specifically go to the heart will be the best choices.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's start coming back, please. Okay, so we have only 8 herbs that we have to talk about tonight, and one of them is considered to be obsolete. It's the cinnabar, but I'm going to mention it anyway because it's an interesting herb, and you will find it named in formulas, even though most prepared formulas these days should not have any cinnabar in them. But anyway, other than that, there's 7 herbs that are pretty useful, and we do use them quite a bit. Some more than others. So the first 2 are the most commonly used mineral herbs. They're longu and muli, and we almost always use them together in formulas. They have a lot of similar properties and actions and a few differences. So Yushan is going to pronounce this for us first.
Longu.
Longu. Okay, long means dragon and gu means bone. So together this means dragon bone. Of course, there's no real such thing as a dragon. So these bones are actually fossilized bones of a large variety of large mammals. So hippopotamuses, rhinoceros, deer, cattle, elephants, and so on. And these are found all over China. I have a picture here that's probably not that easy for you to see, but on the left-hand side, there's a picture of a man standing in front of what looks like a mountain of stuff. And that is a collected pile of these fossilized mammal bones. And apparently there's a never-ending supply of these because this herb is not expensive to buy. So it's not really an herb. I mean, it is, we call everything herbs, even if they're minerals, but you can tell looking at this that it is, if you look at your sample, you can see by the texture of it that it's a fossilized bone. You can see the kind of porous texture of it. So the reason we use fossilized bones is that recently dead animals' bones would be more active, more alive and hot. And that's the, you know, things like tiger bone, which we don't use anymore, but when we did use it, it's a very warming substance. It's a yang tonic. And we don't want to tonify the yang and warm up the body in a case like this. We really want to cool and settle and sedate. And so that's why we use the fossilized bones. Okay, so longu is not usually just one type of animal. It could be anything, but your sample will look like this. Just pieces. You can see in the bottom left of the picture here, you can see that cross section where it looks kind of porous and textured. So when you look to identify a mineral substance to see what it is, whether it's a shell or a bone or some other kind of mineral, you have to look pretty carefully and see the texture of it, because once we look at some of the shells, we'll see the texture is very different. Okay, so longu is sweet and astringent and neutral in temperature. And the astringency is really useful, but to get the astringency, we have to use it prepared in a particular way, which I'll tell you about. And this herb goes to heart, liver, and kidney, all organs that can easily be disturbed in Shen disturbance, especially heart and liver, yang rising. The kidney doesn't rise up or anything like that, but if the kidney is a little deficient, there can be more yang rising of the other organs. So also the fact that it goes to the kidney can help this herb's ability to prevent leakages, especially leakages from the lower jaw, like bedwetting. And this herb does have the function to treat that. So the actions when the herb is raw, it has certain actions, which are settling and calming the spirit, especially the heart being disturbed by heart yang rising, and calming and sedating the liver for yang rising. So in both of these yang rising cases, there can be an underlying cause of yin deficiency, allowing the yang to rise, but we still have an excess manifestation that we have to deal with. We have to do the sedating. So just nourishing the yin of the heart or the kidney won't be enough. We have to also sedate. So we have problems like epilepsy, palpitations, insomnia, manic reactions, convulsions, irritability. There may be blurred vision. Somebody's so angry that they're seeing red. You know, that's what people say. They see red because they have so much heat rising up in their body. So that's in its raw form. Now, in its prepared form, and that prepared, it means calcined. So it means that whoever is preparing this, we can't do it at home, but it's been heated up to a very high temperature, like 800 Fahrenheit in an oven. And when you treat a mineral like that, it becomes, for one thing, it becomes more astringing. So that brings out its astringent properties. And then for the other, it becomes softer and more easily assimilated into decoction. So sometimes we calcine, or we use the calcined form if we are afraid it otherwise might be hard to digest. But mostly we calcine it to make it more astringing, in which case it prevents leakages from all three jiaos. It can treat night sweats. It can treat bloody discharges, bedwetting, uterine bleeding, all kinds of leakages. And then also relating to its astringency, it can be used topically for chronic non-healing sores and ulcers. So that's what it does in its prepared form. So when I buy it from my supplier, I buy both types. I buy raw longu and prepared longu. And you can, and keep them separately, and you just choose the one that you need for whatever it is that you're trying to treat. In a decoction, we usually use a fairly large dosage of most minerals because they're heavy and for the most part not completely available to assimilate into a decoction, because you have, it's a hard mineral. We usually use like 15 to 30 grams in a decoction. And then for topical use, it's a whole different story. You have to prepare something. You have to prepare a solution or some other kind of topical treatment. So contraindications are, if people have a weak spleen, you have to be really careful that you don't damage it further. You may try the formula and have them take it for a while just to get a good head start on solving the problem, but you probably will have to switch to something milder and less heavy later on if you notice any spleen problems like loose stools or whatever. Also, the minerals have to be pre-decocted at least 30 minutes before you put any other herbs into your pot. So that's longu. There's a related herb that is the fossilized teeth of various mammals, and they have the same properties, but they are especially effective for palpitations and anxiety and dream disturbed sleep. And they're stronger to calm the shen, but they don't have any particular astringing action. Let me see here. Okay, so that's all I've read about the difference between using the dragon teeth. It's called dens draconis, dens for dental, and the dragon bone. But longu is by far much more commonly used than any kind of teeth. So it is very effective for calming, sedating. Okay, so keywords here are calms the spirit, settles the young, settles and sedates. It sedates the liver. When calcined, it additionally astringes leakages and treats non-healing sores. So I definitely want you to know the difference between, the raw and the calcined. Longu is used a lot in formulas for liver qi stagnation with liver yang rising. As I've said earlier, especially used in Shen problems related to addiction and withdrawal.
Sorry, Professor, is good for liver qi stagnation and liver yin rising? Or yang?
Actually, Longu itself is really effective for the liver yang rising, but when we combine it into formulas that also treat liver qi stagnation, like a Chai Hu related formula, then the Longu sedates the rising yang, and the rest of the formula will calm down the liver qi stagnation. The formula that I'm thinking of is called Longu Muli Chai Hu tongue or something like that. There are a few different variations of it, but a standard formula for people going through addiction withdrawal does combine Longu Muli with Chai Hu and then other liver moving herbs. If I give you this as an ID herb, I'll always give you the chunky form, this one, because the powdered, the calcined will look just like any white powder, and we have a lot of them. We have many herbs that come into like a white powdered form, like talcum and and mangxiao and shugao gypsum and things like that. So if I give it to you for an ID, it will always look like this with chunks. Okay, so those are the keywords. Now, when we talk about the next herb, we're going to see that it contains almost all of these actions. Oh, I already went to the keywords for the next herb. Let me back up. Okay, Longu keywords. When we get to the next herb, we'll see that it has some additional actions in addition to these actions here. So that next herb is an oyster shell. Yushin, can you pronounce it?
Muli.
Muli. Austria concha. That's its botanical name. So it's some kind of oyster shell. I don't know if there's particular, well, there definitely are. Let's see. True oyster has a lot of different subspecies, and then something called pearl oyster, and then there's let's see. Okay, well, you all pretty much know what an oyster is, right? Do you like to eat oysters? I do not
Yes, I
like to
love.
eat. I don't like to eat oysters. Maybe cooked, I could eat them, but I know the people who really love them eat them raw.
I love them. I eat them raw.
Well, good for you. You're a better man than I am, because I just can't stand the texture. We took our son to a French restaurant once, and he was so game. He was willing to try the oysters, and he ate them, and he said, "Mom, I feel like I'm inside an aquarium." So he didn't like them. But they're good for sedating. So Muli, I don't know what the literal translation is for Muli. It probably just means, I'm sure it just means oyster shell. And this is not expensive at all. The last time I looked, it was something like $3 a pound, because they're not, oyster shells are, dispensable after you've eaten the oysters. So I don't know if in China they save the oyster shell after they serve oysters, or if they're maybe just harvesting oysters that aren't really that meant for eating. I just don't really know. Oh, here's E2121. Says true oysters include species of Austria, Crassotria, Pycnodonte, European flat edible oyster, Olympia oyster. Oh, there's so many different kinds of oysters. Portuguese, North American or Virginia style ones. I don't know, are they common in Florida, Louise?
There, we have oyster beds, but you can only eat them in the winter because it's so hot down there. And I know Washington State has a ton of oyster beds.
Oh, okay.
And they have Irish oysters, and there's oysters from New Zealand, and they're from all over the world.
Yeah, and I know that in France, the oyster farmers are very territorial and they have pretty strict, not just etiquette, but actual rules about, who controls which oyster beds, and it's very elaborate. Okay, so mouli is salty and astringent, and that's different from longu, which was sweet and astringent. So we'll see that the salty flavor is important here. Its temperature is cool, so that's one other difference as well. And it goes to the liver and kidney, but not to the heart. So in its raw form, mouli does pretty much everything that longu does. It is actually more effective to benefit the yin and anchor the yang. But it does all these other things, and the calcined form does all of the same things that the calcined form of longu does. And the cooking process is still the same. It has to be 30 minutes pre-decoction. But the difference is with the salty flavor, mouli has the ability to soften hard lumps, like lumps in the neck and different kinds of nodules. So if you have nodules in the neck or thyroid or swollen neck glands, you should combine this with herbs like xuanshen, which is an herb to clear, heat, and cool the blood. Also xiakucao, which is an herb in the clear heat from qi level category, but it's very good for lumps in both the throat and the groin area. And then some of the phlegm herbs like beimu, those are also good for dissipating nodules. So we have lots of herbs from different categories that can dissipate nodules, but mouli with its saltiness can do that as well. And then it also absorbs excess stomach acidity. So for stomach pain, acid regurgitation, gastritis, we can use mouli to absorb the acidity. And I think for that, it needs to be calcined. I'm just checking. Neutralizing acidity and acts as an analgesic. It can be used to relieve stomachache and acid regurgitation. It doesn't really specify for the stomach acid whether you want the raw or the calcined, but for sure, if you want the astringent, you have to use the calcined. And mouli does not seem to have as good an ability to treat topically the sores, but it does have astringency. I'm just looking to see. Yeah, I think that that's one other difference. It's not as strong to treat topically the sores. But longu and mouli are very, very often used together. I can hardly think of a formula that has one and not the other. So, oh, I can, there is a formula. It's a formula for sweating. It's called mouli san. It's for stabilizing exterior and stopping sweating. And it just has 4 herbs in it. 3 of them you already know. So it has mouli, it has huang qi, astragalus, ma huang gen, the root of ephedra, and fu xiaomai. So the huang qi, ma huang gen, fu xiaomai, those herbs all can stop sweating, and then adding mouli on top of that is also a very good strategy for stopping sweating. So for that one, the mouli should be calcined because we want its astringency. Okay, if this is confusing, I'm also going to place another little table in the drive. It's a comparison. of these two herbs with all of the things that I just said. So I'll put that up there as well. Okay.
Hey, Julie, did I miss the cinnabar discussion?
No, we haven't got there yet.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so this is how your mouli will look. On the right, you see the raw, and it's powdered, and it has kind of a brownish beige color. And then on the left, it's the calcined, which makes it whiter. So that's how it will look. And also, if you see it in the, whole form, you probably won't see whole oyster shells like this. You'll see fragments, but you'll be able to tell by the texture that it is a shell. So look carefully at your samples you have in your hand, and also the ones that I'm going to show you on the screen. Look carefully to see what the texture tells you. Okay, so keywords for mouli. The same actions as longu, calms the spirit, settles the yang. That's the main reason we use these both. Sedates the liver. When calcined, also astringes leakages. But we just had 2 whole weeks of astringent herbs that are not going to be damaging to the spleen for the most part. So that's why it's not as common to choose longu and mouli for their astringing properties, because we have so many other choices in the astringent category. But having said that, there is the mouli sun, the formula I just told you about, which is a good formula and a commonly used formula clinically for sweating. So in addition to what longu does, mouli can soften the hard lumps and absorb excess stomach acid. Those are the 2 actions that it has that longu does not have. And the way to remember that is the salty flavor lets it dissolve hardnesses. And we know already that a lot of shells have the ability to absorb excess stomach acid. Like we had the cuttlefish bone. That's not exactly a shell, but it's similar. And then later on tonight, we have a couple of other shells that are also good for excess stomach acid. So somehow it's the calcium in the shells that does that. Just like I mentioned last week, the over-the-counter pills like Rolaids and Tums, those work by their calcium content to settle down excessive stomach acid. Okay. So the next herb is also a mineral. Everything for tonight will be a mineral. And this one is Yuxian.
子时
Shi. Okay, we know shi means stone, and ci here means magnetic. So this is magnetite, and this is a beautiful example of how it may look. I'm not sure if it can look that good just being dug up right out of the ground, or if that's been, somehow polished or treated, but this is a more common way that you'll find it from your supplier. It should be, or it usually is, a black powder. Sometimes though, it'll be chunks of mineral, small chunks. What makes this, this is made up of iron oxide, ferrous oxide, Fe3O4 is the chemical formula for this. It's pungent and salty. Its temperature is cold, and it goes to the kidney and liver. Some sources say that it also goes to the heart to settle the heart, which makes sense when you have this kind of Shen disturbance. It also has an action in the lung, but most authors don't say specifically that it enters the lung, but we need to think about how it works in the lung. So the actions are for the liver, it calms the anchors and calms the spirit. So for things like yang rising dizziness, vertigo, childhood convulsions, and it also nourishes the kidney yin in order to improve hearing and vision. So we find this herb as a modification of Lu Wei Di Huang Wan, which is the typical herb for formula for yin deficiency. When we put magnetite into that formula, it supposedly becomes more effective for things like tinnitus and hearing loss. But I have used that formula for patients with tinnitus, and I've used it for weeks and weeks at a time, and it didn't do any good at all. So tinnitus is very hard to treat, especially when it's related to nerve damage. You can try this for hearing problems and tinnitus, but my opinion is it can't be used long-term just because of the heaviness on the spleen, and that the people I've tried it on, it hasn't worked very well. So the last action that it has that has to do with the lung and the kidney is it helps the kidney to grasp the lung qi for chronic wheezing and asthma, and even just fatigue if the person is not able to breathe, deeply and doesn't have good lung function. I would much rather see like Wu Weizi, walnut, gecko, and herbs like that to improve the lung function, or even Huang Qi and cordyceps and all the other herbs we talked about in the Qi tonic category. I would be much, much more likely to use those than to try using this magnetite. It just has too many problems related to it. So if you do use it, it's a larger dose, 9 to 30 grams. It can ruin the stomach and spleen just like any mineral. You should protect the spleen with an herb like shen chu or something like that. You should pre-decoct this like most minerals. So the formula I was just mentioning is called Erlong Zuo Ci Wan. It's on your handout. Lu Wei Di Huang Wan plus Chai Hu and prepared magnetite. So it's prepared because that makes it more easily assimilated into the formula. That's the main reason. Hearing loss due to old age, tinnitus. So I had like 12 boxes of the prepared patent formula of this, and I gave them to my patient who had tinnitus from hearing, from old age hearing loss. And I said, take these every day until they're all gone. So 12 boxes, that's weeks worth of magnetite based formula, and it didn't help him at all. Just letting you know. Chai Hu is in that formula because it goes to the gallbladder channel, which circles around the ears. And when Chai Hu, when you have liver energy that is stagnant and sometimes moving up to the head, Chai Hu can be helpful, but for some patients, Chai Hu is too raising because it does have a raising function of its own. So you need to be careful and watch out for headaches. It won't happen to everybody, but it could happen. Okay, so let's see where we are here. Keywords. The main thing I want you to know is the ability to, or the stated ability to treat hearing and also vision, and for its ability to treat asthma. Those are the things that set it apart from the other herbs in this category. And interestingly enough, magnetite is pungent and salty. And why would a sedating herb be pungent? Because we want it to go down. And it definitely goes down. I mean, anything this heavy will go down. So the pungency, I'm not at all sure how that comes into its actions. It doesn't really make sense to me why it would be pungent. Okay, so here we have the cinnabar. This herb is obsolete. You don't have to learn it, but it's a beautiful herb. It's really important in Chinese art, and it was very often used in ancient times as a way to calm the shen and to make other herbs more able to calm the shen. So certain other herbs were coated in cinnabar powder. Back then, they didn't understand about the mercury poisoning that you can have with cinnabar. Cinnabar should never ever be heated or cooked because that's what turns it into mercury, and then it's very toxic. So you should not heat this, and it's never calcined. Okay, so Yushen,
朱砂
Ju Sha, cinnabar. Ju Sha means vermilion sand. Sha means sand. Vermilion, I guess, is some way of saying red, for example, perhaps. So here's raw cinnabar. Here's cinnabar combined with some other mineral on a crystal. Here's how cinnabar looks powdered. Now, you guys do not have samples of this, I'm certain. And I don't know if they're still allowed to use it in China, if they may use very small quantities of it under, strict doctor's orders or something. I just don't know. Does anybody happen to know if they use it in China? Okay, I don't know. But if you did get it, this is how it would look. Okay, so it is sweet and toxic. It is cool, and it goes only to the heart. In the ancient formulas where you will still see this in the books, it was used for excess heart fire or deficient yin or blood resulting in heart disturbance. So it sedates the heart and calms the spirit. For muddled shen, severe heat. It also can expel phlegm for like tremors, convulsions, seizures, if there's a phlegm component as well. It also clears heat and relieves toxicity topically. So, of course, we'll never do this, but mouth sores, topically for sores, boils, sore throat. It was used that way when it was used. Cinnabar is commonly encountered with pyrite, marcasite, and another mineral called stibnite in veins near recent volcanic rocks and in hot springs deposit. The most important deposit is at Almaden, Spain, where it has been mined for 2,000 years. Other deposits are in Peru, Italy, the coast ranges of California. Okay, it treats infantile convulsions and epilepsy. It treats skin and external diseases. And then I'm looking at E2121, which doesn't exist anymore, but cautions are no excessive or continuous oral administration should be allowed so as to prevent mercury poisoning. No calcination should be allowed because that process separates out the mercury. Mercury poisoning directly impairs the central nervous system through the blood-brain barrier. So I just wanted to introduce it. On your handout, there's a picture of a lacquered box, and cinnabar is used a lot in art. So they used it to color things that they were going to lacquer. So they would be bright red jewelry boxes, furniture, and all kinds of things. Okay, so we don't really need keywords for Jusha, but just in case you're interested, sedates the excess heart fire, clears heat and expels phlegm, topically relieves toxicity and sores. And it's obsolete. Red mercuric sulfide is what this is. Okay. Now the next herb has two sort of parts to it. We have true regular pearl, and then we have mother of pearl, and they're different. They're similar substances, but they come from different parts of bivalves, shellfish. So this one is just the true pearl. This is called Yushen.
Zhenju.
Genju. This is the botanical name is called Margarita pearl, and the Genju literally translates as precious ball. So that's exactly what it is. Here's a strand of pearls, matching, or actually this is a graduated strand of pearls with large and small, which is a really old-fashioned type of pearl necklace. Nowadays, a lot of people don't wear the graduated ones like this. This is, oh wait, I don't want to talk about that yet. Go back. Oh, well, maybe I have to. So mother of pearl is the inner lining of certain kinds of shells. So it's not a round object that's formed the way pearls are formed. Pearls are formed inside an oyster. You probably know this. It's a process that the oyster makes when there's a foreign substance in there, in the oyster's environment, like a piece of sand or something that's an irritant. So the oyster lays down layers of pearl substance, whatever it is. It's called nacre. N-A-C-R-E is what's called this substance that you find inside shells. So this is mother of pearl, can be found inside many different kinds of shells. This is a nautilus. Let's see if I have other pictures. Oh, this is commercial pearl powder, and I have another version of it over here. It's not expensive. It's meant to be used cosmetically. So you can open up one of these little tiny jars and or this larger jar here. And it comes in a nice box like this. A nice silky box with velvet lining. And this is meant to be applied to the skin, especially the face. So it smooths out the face. It makes the skin look lustrous. It can cover up, spots if there's like imperfections and things like that. So Chinese women typically used the powder for the face to absorb excess oil, just the same way that we use normal face powder. But this has kind of a stinky smell. I don't think you would really want to put it on your face. But it's when we have class in person, I usually pass around the ones that are on the screen, and we play around with them. We experiment and see if it does make our skin look better or what. Okay, so let's go back to pearl, just the regular pearl, because there's a little bit of difference between the two herbs. So pearl genju is sweet and salty and cold. It goes to the heart and liver. It's got a lot of properties just like the other minerals that we mentioned. It sedates the heart, so we can use this for anxiety, palpitations, insomnia, and we'll combine it with some other herbs that we're going to talk about next week that are more the nourishing herbs. But just by itself, it can settle tremors and palpitations. It can reduce fright or anger. It can clear heat from the liver and benefit the eyes. So for blurred vision due to heat in the liver channel or visual obstructions, we can use pearl, liquid. We can use it as eye drops. So when I was teaching class a few years ago, and I had this one, the powdered one, and it's very finely powdered. One of my students mixed it with some purified water and actually just started dropping it into another student's eyes to see how it would work for eye drops. And it didn't do any harm, but it could, possibly clear up a visual, a blurred vision. It promotes healing and generates flesh and treats non-healing ulcers, especially in the throat or gums. So you could make this into a mouthwash. I mean, like a gargle in the same kind of way. You can take the powder, mix it with just plain, clean water, and then use it as a gargle or a mouthwash for gum disease or a sore throat, in fact. For burns, it can be used alone as a powder. If you're using it for the Shen, you can combine it with some of the other minerals like cinnabar, which we won't use, but amber is another herb we're going to talk about tonight, and we could combine this with amber. So, and then for the eye and throat heat, we should combine this with something like Bingpian. Bingpian, we haven't learned yet. It's part of the end of this trimester, but it's called borneol, and it's a white mineral substance, a crystal mineral substance that's used in old-fashioned smelling salts. So it's really, really pungent and aromatic. And if somebody has fainted, if you soak a handkerchief in the Bingpian solution and wave it in front of their face, it can revive them. So for it, and it also, Bingpian is also used topically for things like sore throats and even for herpes sores. So we combine Bingpian with indigo, the blue, deep blue powder, and together that makes a topical treatment called Qingdai-san, and that's excellent for herpes, oral herpes and genital herpes, and it really, really works. Okay, so pearl, if you do get pearl powder, it will come in the powdered form. You're not going to get actual pearl pieces. And truly, these will not be pearls like this. I mean, these are high quality pearls that you make into jewelry. The pearls that you'll use for, pearl powder are inferior, not good looking, but they still have the right chemical makeup. Okay, so let's see. For eye pain, again, there are many herbs we can combine with this. The herbs that we have already learned that treat the eyes, some are yin tonic herbs, some are clear heat from chi level herbs. Many, many herbs clear heat from the eyes, like chrysanthemum is one of the best, and some of the other shells as well. And some have said that pearl as a topical can be used for a type of eye disease called a pterygium. Does anybody know what a pterygium is? It starts with a P. It's a silent P, PT. It's a growth of the conjunctiva. So the conjunctiva is your eyelid. And a tissue can grow over the cornea, and it happens from dusty irritation, like being exposed to desert, dirt and dust, or also from overexposure to sunlight. And so I'm sure that most people would just rather go to an eye specialist and have it taken care of. But in ancient times, this was probably used for that, as well as, just as I said, blurred vision.
Pterygium is also on your fingernail. It's your cuticle. When your cuticle starts growing over your nail, that's pterygium as well.
Oh, thank you. And what causes that to happen?
Not taking care of your cuticles and them drying out. Not pushing them back.
Good advice. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Genju keywords. This is for the main product, the pearl, not the mother of pearl. Calms the liver and heart, anchors the young, benefits the vision, promotes healing, and brightens and softens the skin. It doesn't appear that I have a slide giving the keywords for the mother of pearl. But on the handout, it says that the mother of pearl is very commonly used because it's much, much cheaper. I've never purchased real pearl ever in my life, but I have mother of pearl. It has the same properties as pearl. Anchors the liver, anchors the young, calms the liver, brightens the vision, pre-decoct. And Genju Mu is the lining of the shell in which the pearl was grown, or sometimes it's the lining of a shell that didn't ever have a pearl in it.
Julie, I'm confused. Is this one of our herbs, the mother of pearl? Like we need to know this one too, or?
I believe so. Let me check the herb list. Yes, Genju and Genju Mu are both on the herb list. But they basically have the same properties. There's really not much difference. Sweet, salty, same properties, cold, enter heart and liver. It's really just a substitute for pearl because pearl is going to be very expensive. Yeah. We also use abalone shell, which is called Shuzhui Ming. And I can't right now remember what category that's in. Let me look it up. I would have thought it should be in this category, but it's obviously not. Let me just see here.
I see it's under extinguished wind.
Oh, right. Okay. Right. It's under extinguish internal wind, which is a very similar action to settling yang, because internal wind, one of the causes of it is rising yang. So yeah, Shuzhui Ming, we will study in the next 3 weeks from now under extinguishing internal wind, and we'll see that it has similar abilities to calm the shen and sedate the yang when that's a part of the internal wind problem. Okay, so it's 7:50. Let's take another 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and finish up the rest of these.
Bye, Julie.
Okay, let's start to come back. Um, okay, let's come back, everybody. Yoshi, are you there? Because I wanted to ask you something. Well, when she shows up, I'll ask her. So. Okay, so this is the next herb. This is amber, and amber is used in a lot of different ways over the years. Spiritual things, jewelry things, decorative things, and even aromatherapy. So this is Yushin
琥珀
Hu Po. Sucanem, amber. The term hu po, it means tiger soul, because there's a myth that, I don't know where it came from, China perhaps. When a tiger dies, its soul enters the earth and is transformed into stone, and this stone is amber. Actually, amber comes from fossilized resin of I said pine trees, but I'm wondering if there are other trees. Does anybody know what, if amber comes from other kinds of tree resins as well? Okay, well, I don't know either. I just know that it's a resin. It's been underground for millennia. I mean, millions of years. And amber often has stuff embedded in it, like insects and other things. In fact, some things that we know about prehistoric insects and animals are because they've been preserved so perfectly inside a piece of amber. And so here on the screen is a piece of amber. This is a polished piece. Your own sample of amber won't look like this at all. It'll look really dull, and it'll look like this. Just, it's not ugly, but it's just raw. It's crude. I wanted to show you this. This is an amber room. Hold on. An amber room in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. Wait, I'm not seeing the whole slide. Okay, there we go. This was a room that had 13,000 pounds of amber. The entire room was decorated in amber, and it was looted during the Second World War and just completely, looted and destroyed and taken apart. So this is a replica built in 1979 through 2003. The current value is $500 million of amber. Oh, here's a baby dinosaur tail encased in amber, found in Myanmar in 2016. A baby dinosaur tail. Okay, so what do we use amber for? Amber is used, my analysis is about 50% of the time it's used for problems of the heart organ, so Shen problems relating to the heart. 25% of the time it's used for the same kind of problems with the liver organ. So liver needing sedating. And then it also has some actions in the urinary bladder, about 25%. So it's mostly used in the heart. It's sweet and neutral, and it goes to the heart, liver, and UB, all three organs that I just mentioned. So for the heart, it calms the Shen. It can be used for tremors and palpitations. It also invigorates the blood. We don't really see that action in other of these sedating minerals. But amber does have the ability to invigorate the blood, and it's been shown to be useful in things like coronary heart disease and angina. So similar to if you've had herbs too, we had the chi regulators, and in that category we had two woods, heartwoods. We had sandalwood, and we had another heartwood called Shenxiang Aquilaria. These are two heartwoods, so they're deep inside old ancient trees, and they're very aromatic. And these two herbs were also good, especially sandalwood, for moving the blood through the heart to relieve pain and to relieve blood stagnation there. So that's its action on the heart. So it's very good that way. And people use amber oil for aromatherapy, and it can be very calming, just releasing that aroma into the environment for just creating a calming environment is very good. So in the urinary bladder, we use this for promoting urination for bloody Lynn syndrome. So Lynn syndrome is a urinary function disorder, and when there's blood in the urine, amber can help with that. We should also combine amber with other hemostatic herbs like pu huang, the cattail pollen. If you haven't had those herbs yet, that's okay. But we use cattail pollen to invigorate the blood and also to stop bleeding. And then we can also use amber for kidney stones. I have never treated kidney stones ever, and I probably wouldn't unless I had some good advice from somebody else, because I don't have any experience with it. But this has been shown to have some usefulness in kidney stones. It also can be used topically to reduce swelling and promote healing. So topically, non-healing sores, if you make some kind of application to put on the skin, we could use that. In the old days, it was combined with cinnabar for childhood convulsions with fear and fright, especially like night frights. You could give that to children. The herb can cause drowsiness, and we also use it in a pretty small amount, 1.5 to 3 grams, and we're mostly going to be using it in a powdered form, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Here's what it looks like. This is exactly how it looks in my container, which I don't have here in the office. So yeah, it's generally going to be used powdered because it won't be very good in decoction. I mean, you could put it in a decoction, but it probably needs to be pre-decocted. Oh, I'm sorry. Do not heat or decoct. Use it in powder or pill form only. It can be rolled into pills with honey. Or you can add, if you have the powder, you can add it to the finished decoction as soon as it's cool, but it probably won't dissolve very well, I'm thinking. I've never tried to do it. Amber is not that easy to use, or it's not that common to use. I don't know that there are any formulas at all that have amber. Let me check and see. If you have TCM Clinic Aid, there's a really nice, beautiful picture of it in its powdered form. It looks kind of crystal-like, kind of sparkly. Calms convulsions, palpitations. Oh, it is found in 2 formulas. These are kind of unusual formulas. One is called Dao Chu Qing Xin Tang. Dao Chu means something red. Zhibao Dan is another special pill. Let's see what that's for. For clear heat and open the orifices. So that's for like fainting or loss of consciousness. And the other formula, the Dao Chu, is for clearing heat from the organs. It clears heat in the small intestine. So yeah, amber is found in a couple of formulas. I'd love to look and see on these formulas in the preparation of them, how do you put the amber in there? Because if you're not supposed to decoct it, how is it done? Probably it's added to the finished decoction, I'm guessing.
Professor,
Yes.
in my culture, we say for this herb, we say condor. And for my baby, when I was pregnant, I use exactly 8 months, or maybe I think every day. I used it, mixed it with my mom, mixed with a kind of sugar for me, and I put 1 spoon of this to honey and milk every day morning. I had this for maybe for make my baby smart and intelligent. And I had it every day for I think 8 months before my baby.
Well, did it work? Was your baby smart and
Yeah,
intelligent?
my son is very calm and very intelligent. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. And it sounds like it would be delicious too. Milk, honey, amber.
And a kind of sugar, we said nabat is a perfect thing for mind. The sugar is good for mind, for brain.
What kind of sugar is it?
I have it. Do you want me to bring it?
Yeah.
Just a moment. Yeah.
I wonder if it's like a rock sugar or something like that. We'll see. I never heard of taking amber orally for what she's talking about, and especially in pregnancy. I guess if it's a small enough amount, it should be okay.
This is a sugar that we use.
Oh, so it's like a rock sugar.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
this.
I see. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, it can cause drowsiness, but probably in the dosage that you used it probably didn't.
No.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. It can also enhance in a way that you wouldn't like the use of barbiturate drugs, which are like, sedative drugs. So if somebody is taking sedative drugs for some reason, don't let them take amber because you could run into trouble. Yeah, and so it says here on my handout that you can powder it and roll into pills with honey. So that sounds like a little bit what Elham was talking about. It's very soft and easy to crush, I understand. I haven't tried to crush it myself, but it seems like it's not a hard mineral at all. Okay, so let's see what we have here for keywords. Calms the Shen, invigorates the blood, and promotes urination. So I'm gonna look into that and see if there's any research from any part of the world on taking amber orally for various preventive reasons or other kinds of reasons. Okay, so now we have fluorite, and I have a couple examples here. Fluorite comes in many colors. Usually if it's used for jewelry, it's going to be in the purple range or pale blue. I have several pieces of fluorite, well, 2 pieces of fluorite jewelry, but anyway, this is going to be pronounced. Yushian, are you still here?
子时音
Zhi shi yin. So Z means purple, Sh means stone, and Ying means radiance. So we often find the word Ying relating to brightness or brightening the mind or brightening the eyes. The word Ming also has that connotation of brightness, I think, as well. Bensky says that only white and purple fluorite are used in formulas. The white fluorite is used more for the lung. Purple is used more for bleeding, like blood, treating the blood, female, like uterine blood problems. So here's one picture of fluorite. Here's another, a green one. Here's some other colors. The one piece that I have that I bought at a gem shop in Manhattan, it looks like this. It's kind of a very translucent bluish green color. And I also have a little polished slab of purple fluorite like this. I got a little carried away finding pictures of fluorite because it's just so beautiful. This is a picture of my fluorite that this is how I get it from my supplier. Kind of dull, but it's actually pretty. There's purple, green, and other colors in there. Bensky says the blue and the green, red, yellow, and black are not used in medicine. But when I get this, I do see green chunks and other chunks. So I don't think it matters very much. It's probably more of a traditional, I don't know, maybe even like a superstition or something like that. I'm sure the chemical makeup has to be very similar. So this is made up of calcium, fluorite, silicon dioxide. I'm not really strong in chemistry, so you can't really ask me what that means, but that's the components of this. Now, fluorite is different from all the other minerals that we've been talking about because it's warm, it's not cooling. So some choose this if they don't want a fluorite that's going to be, or if they don't want a mineral that's going to be too cooling because the person can't tolerate that, especially in their spleen. So fluorite is sweet and warm. It goes to the heart and liver, and some say lung, which makes sense because it does warm the lung and lower rebellious qi to treat wheezing, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So the main action for this is sedating the heart and settling tremors or palpitations. So it also warms the lungs, lowers rebellious lung qi for wheezing with copious sputum. So we also have Dai-zhi-shi, hematite, which had an action on wheezing, but hematite is cold and heavy. This is heavy, of course, because it's a mineral, but it's warming. So you might want to choose fluorite instead of hematite if you want a more warming action. It also warms the womb and stops bleeding, or can treat infertility due to cold in the womb. And it can also treat excessive menses. Usually that's due to deficiency, in which case you should combine this with Artemisia, mugwort, the Aya, which is what we use for moxa, and the terracotta baked earth herb. These are all hemostatics. If you haven't had them, don't worry. But the warming hemostatics are used for cold, deficient bleeding. And usually what's deficient is the spleen. The spleen is cold and deficient. It's not holding the blood in place. And so the menstrual bleeding is unregulated. This also needs to be pre-decocted, and the dosage is anywhere from 6 to 15 grams. Bensky says it's used more in clinic than some of the other minerals because it's being much more economical than, say, amber, pearl, and cinnabar. And of course, cinnabar is unavailable. This also is a mineral that's soft and it's easy to pulverize it. So if it's in larger chunks and you're going to put it into a decoction, you should pound it as finely as you can to make it cook better. It won't take as long to cook if it's in smaller pieces. patients will love this if you tell them what it is. I mean, certain patients, not all patients will love it, but if they need this in their formula, show it to them in the jar and tell them what it is and why you're putting it in there. And they really appreciate being given, you know, a special mineral treatment that's going to calm their nerves and settle them down. Okay, so we have keywords. 子是ying, sedates the heart, warms the lung, warms the womb to stop bleeding, and is affordable. So it goes, yeah, heart, liver, lung. The liver channel is how it relates to the uterus. So that runs through that area. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh, this is a case study. I'm not sure why. Let me see if I know why this is here, because I don't think I gave her. I'll go back if I need to. This is what I gave her. So why are we talking about this? Hasho Wu.
I don't think you put a updated deck into the Google Drive because we don't have this.
Oh, what was the first part of what you said? I didn't put what?
This all on this case study in the Cinnabar.
Oh, so you don't have it at all. Well, that's just as well, because looking at the formula, it doesn't really relate that well to today's topic, although it does have some yin tonics, some blood tonics, and some chi tonics in here, but it's a complicated case and it's not really relevant at this moment. So I'm not going to bother with it because I want to show you something else that's in the drive and a couple of other things that are in the drive. So let me just go there. Okay, hold on. Okay, how do I get to the drive? Oh, okay. Let me minimize this and maximize that. Okay. Okay. So in the drive, this is a document that you will find in there. Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so this is called Summary of Common Minerals. And not all of these minerals here are ones that you will have had already in this class, but some of them are. So this is someplace you can go later, you know, when you've had all the different categories, and you can just look at the different categories of herbs that minerals can come from. So for example, this is halloysite. It's an astringent. So we've already covered that.
Julie, are we supposed to see your screen? Because we don't.
I'm so sorry. Here, I'm going to share it right now. Okay, so this document is called Summary of Common Materials. You see it now, right? Okay, so we have halloysite. We've already reviewed that as an astringent. Hematite we haven't looked at yet because it extinguishes internal wind. And then here's some of the others from tonight. Cinnabar, magnetite, fluorite, amber, pearl. Here's the Longo and Muli. So this is just a place to look at all of the minerals together and see if, you know, how they relate. For example, what's their temperature? All of them, mostly cool. I'm going to go up the temperature column. Longu is neutral. Amber is neutral. Fluorite is warm. Almost every other mineral except halloysite is also warm. So this is just in the drive. I just wanted you to know that it was there. And I also wanted to point out a couple of other things. Well, there are several summaries here. Table of, this is the deer antler relatives. So I think I've shown you this one before. Yeah. So it goes through the different parts of the deer antler. And then another useful thing to do, I keep saying my stuff is so useful. I don't know if you think it is or not, but this is a table of showing insects and worms to extinguish internal wind. So we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. So once we're done with that, you can take a look at this. Some of these are from other categories, like for example, Chantui is the cicada exoskeleton, and it's in the category of cooling diaphoretic. So that's something from Herbs 1. But yeah, anyway, there are several documents like this in the drive that can just be a helpful study guide for you as you're doing your summer, as you're studying for major exams too, not just exams for this class. So later I'm going to put up in the drive the lecture notes that I was working from at the beginning of tonight's class.
Thank you for giving us all these extra resources, Julie.
Oh, you're so welcome. I don't give as much as I could. I know that Robert Hoffman, he uses the official Yosan portal a lot, and he's very tech savvy, and I'm not as much, but he puts all kinds of things in there, links and other resources, but I try to add to my drive as much as I can. Now, I had a question. Is there anybody here who's still having any trouble with the drive in terms of finding the documents that they want? And on that topic, Yoshi, do you have a minute when we end class, and we'll probably end a little bit early? Do you have a minute to just talk with me one-on-one? Because I want to make sure you got your problem solved with Sean.
Yeah, sure. I actually figured it out, but
Oh, well, that's good. Then I don't need to know anything else.
yeah, no.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I think part of the issue was you have other parts of Google Drives that belong to just you and that may contain many, many things from other classes. I think Sean referred to that part of the Google system as things that have been shared with you. So those are things that you may see when you're in your own Google Drive. But when you're in my drive, which is how you would get where you would go if you use that link that I originally sent you, you will be seeing only my documents, these things here, the Word documents. So those are the handouts, the PowerPoints, and then all these other extra little things that I put in there. So you shouldn't, when you're in my drive, you shouldn't be seeing anything from any of your other classes, but you have other drive access, I guess, that does put you in touch with things from other classes. So I just wanted to make sure that was understood. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left, and I don't want to let you go quite yet, because I thought we're in week 10. I thought it might be a good idea just to do a little bit of reviewing of just tongues and pulses for the different categories of herbs that we've already gone through, because I do believe on the midterm that there were a few misconceptions about what kind of tongue you would find with different kinds of conditions. So I wanted to just talk a little bit and have you talk about what kind of tongue you would expect in the different deficiency categories that we've been through. So when we have Qi deficiency, and that could be lung, spleen, kidney, but just plain Qi deficiency, no other deficiency, what type of tongue do you feel is a common tongue that you would see? What should the tongue look like for Qi deficiency?
Pale.
And who said that? Olivia?
Yeah.
Yeah, and why is the tongue pale?
Well, I know that it's not red. So
I think
That's-
can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think because the no chi is not chi movement is spilling and the enter to the from mouth, and that's why it's because it's not movement and not oxygenated. That's why the tongue will be pale.
Well, that's an interesting thought. But when we think about the blood not moving properly, we usually call that qi stagnation. And in that case, we usually expect to see more of a purple tongue, right? If the qi isn't moving, it would be a purple tongue. But in qi deficiency, the problem isn't that the qi isn't moving, it's that the qi isn't there. I mean, there just isn't enough of it. So, yeah, I think the tongue is pale. You know what? Honestly, I don't know why the tongue is pale in this moment. And I don't even have any I don't have basic theory books in my office because I don't teach theory. But let's try to find out why the tongue is pale. It could just be showing the lack of nourishment. If there's not enough qi, it means there's probably not proper nutrition. There's just not energy in general. And so the tongue could be pale. But will the tongue be wet, or could the tongue be wet with qi deficiency?
yeah.
Yes, because if there's qi deficiency, it could mean the spleen is not transforming fluids and they're starting to accumulate. And that's another reason why a qi deficient tongue could also have teeth marks on it, because the tongue is swollen with fluid because the spleen isn't moving the fluids. So that's actually verging on even a damp looking tongue. So it's not just lacking in qi, but it's also now starting to build up some dampness. So that's a pale and puffy tongue. Okay, so blood deficiency, what kind of tongue?
Julie,
Yeah.
wouldn't an explanation for the pale tongue just be that the qi is the commander of the blood? And so if the qi is not commanding the blood, then the blood's not getting to the tongue?
It makes sense. It makes sense. But what is the qi not commanding the blood to do? Move? Circulate?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's not circulating well.
Okay, well, and then if it isn't circulating well, I would think you're going to start to see qi stagnation, and then it might be verging on purple. So often what we see is like a pale purple tongue. And so that may indicate qi deficiency and qi stagnation, which are absolutely make sense that they would go together for the reason that you just said, Adam. So thinking about blood deficiency, what type of tongue must you see? It should have two qualities to it.
Pale and no coat.
Pale for sure. I was thinking
Okay.
paleness and dryness should both be existing in a blood deficient tongue, because the blood, one of the blood's main purposes is to moisten things. So if there's not enough blood, there won't be moisture. When I think about no coat, I think much more about yin deficiency, because yin deficiency tongue is also a very dry tongue, but it's a dry tongue with redness. So that's the difference. So a blood deficient tongue could be dry and pale, whereas a yin deficiency tongue should be dry and red. And that's because if there's yin deficiency, there's not enough cooling property in the body, so there's going to be heat. Okay, so the tongues overlap somewhat. Thinking about yang deficient tongue, what will you see? Two things mainly. So yang deficiency people are cold. So what does that mean the tongue should look like?
Pale.
Pale as well.
White coat,
Mhm.
And what else,
a
Yoshi?
white coating.
A white coating?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And also wet. So when the yang is deficient, you don't have yang moving the water. So spleen deficiency can cause a wet tongue because it's not transforming the water, but yang deficiency can cause a wet tongue because it's not cooking the water. Right? So a yang deficient tongue is the person is cold, water is accumulating, and therefore you have wet, maybe even swollen and puffy, but still pale. Can a yang deficient tongue ever be red?
No.
No. Thank you. It can never be red. I mean, if they have yang deficiency and something else at the same time, like yang and yin deficiency, then yeah, it might be. But just purely yang deficient tongue should not be red.
But it will be pale maybe in yang deficiency because of coldness and wetness, right?
Yes, it should be pale, but not pale red. It should just be plain pale. So
Wonderful.
now we know that if we have a pale and swollen tongue, we could be looking at qi deficiency or we could be looking at yang deficiency. We need more information to know which of those we're looking for. If a tongue is just dry, we know we could be looking at yin deficiency or blood deficiency. And again, we need more information to know what kind of deficiency there is. The more pale it is, the more likely it's blood deficiency, and the more red it becomes, the more we're looking at yin deficiency. Okay, so that's good. And now what about pulses? So for all deficiencies, we should find some evidence of a weak, some kind of weak pulse. But then within the different deficiencies, there might be other differences too. So a weak pulse can either be, it just feels like there's not enough force, you can't find it, it's deep maybe, or you find it easily, but it's very thready and thin and doesn't have much, like not much width to it. So when there's blood deficiency, you often find that thready tongue. But for just plain qi deficiency, what kind of tongue, or what kind of pulse must you have? Like, what is the one quality that the pulse absolutely should have if there's qi deficiency?
Weak.
A slow,
Yeah.
weak.
Weak, some kind of weakness. If there's blood deficiency, then it's also some kind of weakness, but also thready, because thready lets you know that there isn't enough volume filling up the pulse, you know, width-wise, if you know what I mean. Like if you think of the pulse or the blood vessels as a straw that has to be filled up with blood. If it's not filled up with blood, it will be diminished and it will be skinny and thready, and that indicates the blood deficiency. Now, a yin deficient pulse can also show weakness, but what else is it likely to show? Yin deficient pulse. Think about it.
Would it be,
Imbalance,
it would show,
not properly.
I'm sorry, Adam and then Elham. Adam first.
I was thinking signs of heat. So like, you know, what's the right word? A little more forceful, or
How about rapid?
rapid. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So when there's heat in the body from any cause, it speeds things up. So that's when you have a rapid pulse. What were you going to say, Elham?
I was thinking about maybe it would be irregular palpation, you know, is not.
Actually, an irregular pulse, I mean, literally could occur with anything, but usually an irregular pulse is found in blood stagnation, not any kind of deficiencies. Although you certainly could, let's say you had heart qi deficiency, for example, you definitely could have an irregular pulse, missing beats, or just not feeling smooth. So you definitely could. But when you have a really irregular pulse, whether it's choppy or regularly irregular, meaning it skips the same kind of beats every time, usually that's a sign of blood stagnation.
And it's the same as maybe a blood circulation problem. If somebody has a blood circulation problem, it's like this one, the irregulation in pulse, right?
Exactly, because blood circulation problem in our medicine is blood stagnation, not moving properly. Okay, now in yang deficiency, what kind of additional quality, or not additional, I mean, I guess in addition to being weak, because that's a given, for yang deficiency, what else could the pulse show that's sort of opposite of the pulse we just talked about in yin deficiency?
Slow.
Yes, good. Slow because why?
Coldness and
Yeah, the coldness is just slowing everything down. So there's not enough metabolic activity. There's not enough fire. There's not good energy. And that's why people with yang deficiency have like hypothyroid conditions, slow, tired, sluggish, clammy, maybe overweight, dry hair, all that kind of stuff. It comes from not enough vital energy in the body. Okay, that's good. Now, let's see. Thinking about the whole category of stabilize and bind, I don't think we can really assign a standard type of pulse to people with these problems. I mean, they have deficiencies of various kinds. That's why we need to astringe and hold in substances. But depending on what we're trying to hold in, that's going to indicate a different type of disorder. So I'm not sure that we could say that a patient needing astringent herbs is going to have a particular standard type of pulse, or do you think there is one? I mean, in the same way that we said any deficiency should show a weakness of some sort on the pulse, I guess we could say that anybody needing astringent herbs has deficiency going on. And so those people would show some kind of a weak pulse as well. We just don't know what kind of weak. Would it be slow? Would it be thready? What it would be? It depends on what they actually have going on. Okay, that was. Go ahead.
It would depend on, yeah, like you could do it based on the symptom. Like if they needed to stop sweating, night sweating, what would their pulse be?
Then it would be like a yin deficient rapid pulse. Yeah, that's exactly right. If they have asthma due to kidney deficiency, then maybe the pulse will be deep in the kidney position, things like that. So yeah, good. Okay, well, that was a good review because those are very, very basic things, but they're hard things to keep straight, especially on an exam. And in real life, they're actually hard to always reconcile. You don't always find the tongue and pulse that you think that you're looking for. That happens a lot, probably more often than that you do. So I use the tongue and pulse not as a purely diagnostic tool, but only to confirm what I already think is going on. Once I talk to them, once I perceive their energy, and I have a feeling what I think the diagnosis is, I'll use the tongue and pulse to confirm that. But if it seems really off, I may have to question my diagnosis, or I may have to eventually say, no, this is the right diagnosis, but they just have a paradoxical something going on with their tongue and pulse, but I'm going to go with my instinct most of the time. Only if the tongue is really off, like if they have a red tongue and I'm already trying to diagnose yang deficiency, that's not logical and that's not going to work. Okay, well, thank you. I think we're safe to stop now.
Hey, Julie,
And
can you say one more thing about the floating empty for yin deficiencies?
of course, about the which deficiency?
For like chi deficiency, that's what I meant. Chi deficiency, the pulse, I've heard floating empty. What is
Well, empty just means that when you press on it, you don't feel very much. So that's just another type of deficient pulse. It's just forceless. It's just not got very much force behind it. And then empty, did you say empty, Sola?
yes, like
Or you
it's a
said, oh no, you said floating, I think.
floating dash empty.
Okay, so floating usually is a pulse that we associate with an exterior condition because the pathogenic problem is in the exterior of the body. So the body is trying to expel it, which it only can do if it can push it out to the exterior. And that's why we usually say that if there's a floating pulse, it's an exterior condition. But you could describe a pulse as floating if it's also chi deficient because it's just kind of not anchored, like it's just floating away in a certain way, I think you could say. But you can also find a very deep pulse with chi deficiency because it's just submerged from not being strong enough to be felt at the surface. So there are some pulse qualities that could be found in more than one condition. That's the best answer I can come up with right now. Are you still in any kind of principles and theories class?
Yes, I have Dr. Chen.
Okay, well, ask her and see what she says, and then you can report back to us what her opinion of it is.
Okay, thanks.
Would be a good idea. Okay, I'm still here. We have 2 more minutes if people have other questions. And next week we will do the nourishing the heart herbs, which are really wonderful herbs, and I use them all the time. Just almost every single day I use those herbs. And so they're really, really useful, and we'll see why next week. All right, then I guess if there's nothing else, I'll just see you all next week. Have a safe week.
Thank you.
And yeah,
Thank you, Julie.
good luck with your
Julie.
studying. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.